So Overlord, the Nazi zombie film. Well, actually, it's kind of more like half Nazi zombie film. It's kind of in the same vein of like, like From Dusk Till Dawn, where it starts off as one film, and you think you've settled into this genre of film, and then halfway through, it turns out to be something else, and and it's one of those films that almost like that I wish kind of like like Soylent Green, like you wish you knew nothing about the film going into it, because then it would be more of like a genuine shock and a surprise. Not to say that even when you do know that it's got the whole like zombie aspect to it, it's still pretty shocking for what it is. Because here's the thing, like for the first half of the film, it starts off like a war film, like a big budget, intense, gritty, bloody, loud war film. So you have this company during World War II they're going to be landing in I think like this French town. I think it's a French village, yeah. And they basically have to stop this tower. So that the rest of the Allied forces can get in there. Now, of course, they come in through the air, and like a lot of planes are shot down, and barely anyone survives, and there's only a handful of soldiers left. And so these soldiers, they basically have to brave this French countryside that's been taken over by the Germans. They have to be careful. They might step on landmines. One of them actually does, so you kind of got to be careful around here. Soldiers are at every turn, and you got to be quiet. You gotta keep a low profile here. And for the first half of the film, we build up a lot of it. We build up the characters, and we establish that it does feel like a war, a bit of an overblown war, because we get some like some big shots of when the planes are shot down, and soldiers being thrown out into the air, and there's gunfire and explosions everywhere, and there's a gunfire and explosions at every turn, and there's going to be more later on as well. But we get to know a few of the characters here, and we get to like them a little bit. You have Private Boyce here, one of the paratroopers. He's played by I'm gonna screw up his name. I just know it. Yoda Madepo. And he actually speaks pretty good French here, so he's got a purpose here. But he's kind of a bit of a meek guy in the terms of he's not as adept at killing people, so he's not as committed to to being as dirty as the Nazis that he's fighting here. But who is committed to it is Captain Ford, who's played by Wyatt Russell, who's actually Kurt Russell's son. And the more I kept watching this, well, because I didn't know this was Wyatt Russell going into it, and I kept looking at this guy thinking, he kind of looks like a young Kurt Russell, and sure enough, it is a young Kurt Russell. It's his son. And he does a pretty good job here with that kind of kind of Kurt Russell grit that you like to see in stuff, stuff like The Thing and like Escape from New York and stuff like that. He's really good in the film as kind of the kind of the more down and dirty type captain who's willing to bend the rules and be just as nasty as the Nazis. So he obviously comes to blows a lot of times with Private Boyce about deciding what they should do with the tower, like what do we have to destroy in it? Should we save some people inside, or what should be our next move? So they come to blows a lot of times, especially because they end up hiding in this one village home with this one woman they befriend, and they actually save her from some Nazis, and they're gonna have to save her again at one point. But eventually, Boyce will at one point sneak into the Nazi tower and discover that below they're doing secret Nazi experiments on making Hitler's perfect soldiers that that can have super strength and can withstand death, and essentially just like superpowered zombies. And you will see a few different versions of them. You'll see one that's kind of got kind of half an arm missing. You'll see ones that kind of have, like you saw, half their face missing. Maybe different parts of their faces kind of here and there. It's still experimental. It's experimental. They're not finished with this yet. And it's kind of interesting to see that too. All these science experiments are just make all these horrifying and terrifying monsters, because they are genuinely creepy, and it becomes a pretty gory film at times. So you gotta have stuff look creepy, otherwise it gets too goofy. Because that's the one thing I think, based on the trailer that a lot of people saw, they're expecting this to be kind of like a campy, over the top type film. And here's the thing, it kind of is and it kind of isn't. Here's the deal. It's like one of those, kind of classic 70s type films, kind of exploitation type of war and horror type stuff. But it plays it earnestly. Like there's never a moment where like, you know, where they flip on like, you know, Black Betty, or they or they go over the top with the gore, they crack too many jokes, or they wink at the camera. There's none of that here. It's portrayed very earnestly, like a, you know, almost like a serious Nazi zombie movie. And because they take it so seriously, I think it better comes across to kind of like sell that atmosphere of having fun with it, because it does go it does go for it in terms of gore. There's a lot of great body horror here. You will see someone kind of like, you know, like flip back their neck, and you'll see like their bones stick out here and there. You'll see them take damage. You'll see like half a face torn off. You'll see blood and guts here and there. You'll see one woman begging for help because like her spine's been detached from her body and she's somehow kept alive. There's some pretty gruesome stuff here. In fact, by the time you get to the climax of the film, it gets really gritty and brutal, and really amps up on the explosions and the blood and the grit and the violence, and it's just, oh man, it's so delicious, so wonderfully delicious here. And I was surprised, because this is actually, I mean, they're touting it as being produced by J.J. Abrams, which is great, because Abrams has a lot of power to do some more experimental stuff. And this is definitely experimental here, because it earns its R. It's very gory, it's very violent, and it's especially loud too. It makes great use. We saw this in IMAX. It makes great use of the screen with a lot of the explosions, the gunfire, and the long shots of the countryside, and almost kind of like the faux one-shot takes that are here and there. It makes great use of all that stuff. This is actually by a fairly new director, Julius Avery, who, to the best of my knowledge, he's only done one other film. It's just a small one called Son of a Gun from a couple of years ago. He's a fairly new Australian director, and I'm telling you, man, if he can do kind of like genre blender films this well, I think he's got a pretty interesting future ahead of him. So you're actually seeing kind of a more this is kind of like more of an original film with someone who is fairly new that you're going to want to keep your eye on. You never know, especially since Abrams has put some trust in this guy. And I gotta say, like, you know, the film kind of earns its right to go over the top and gory with it, I think, because it does spend just enough time with the characters. It doesn't really waste a lot of time here. It doesn't linger on stuff too much. It establishes the characters clear cut, so we know enough about them. So that when the bullets start slinging, when we start getting more of the crazy gore effects, when when at one point, like, Private Boyce is running through a lab where explosion here, explosion there, like he's trying to escape from a Michael Bay film, it earns it by that point. It earns it, because it goes for it, and it takes itself seriously, with a great earnest, where you can almost kind of sense the tongue-in-cheek nature there, where you kind of, it's not gonna spoon feed you jokes here. It's not gonna spoon feed the camp here. Part of the appeal of the camp is that, you know, it has over the top body horror, and it has all this grisly violence and showdowns and explosions, and it feels like a real gritty war. It's a lot of fun. I'm trying to find the best way to say it. It's like it's trying to have fun without saying like hey, how about you have fun here? No. This takes itself seriously enough, earnestly enough, where you can enjoy the film on its own merits without it having to make easy jokes, or even easy gore or violence. Like, I was kind of surprised by how, like, we're going back to the Dusk Till Dawn elements here, but I was actually kind of surprised how the film kind of was almost a little bit subtle with how it went about with the Nazi zombie experiments here, because you don't see any of them. Well, you don't see like them fully until like halfway through the film, and then after that you only see like a little bit of like bits and pieces here and there. It seems like it's just showing you the money shots. Like, it seems like I could go over the top here by having, like, you know, the soldiers assault a whole room of Nazi zombies, and there's blood and guts and gore all over the place, kind of like in Dead Alive. It never goes that crazy. I think it goes just crazy enough where you can enjoy the film on those merits, without it winking at you. And for that, I actually really dug the film. So for Overlord is a lot of fun. If you like your war films big and loud, and if you like your horror, you know, grisly and gory and with lots of blood, Well, you're gonna get all that here, man. This was a lot of fun. So for Overlord, 4 out of 5 stars.